All right, welcome back, everyone. Me and Damon are about to recap episode 3 of Last of Us. Just quick thing before we open up into this episode. This was an emotional fucking haymaker, even for me, just re-recording it and going back in and rewatching scenes and pulling clips out. It just really messed me up. So HBO, you fucking bastards, did it and dropped an absolute haymaker on us. So Damon, what did you feel before we get into this?
I was waiting for so much action that when I first saw this one, I didn't know what to think. But the longer the time has passed since it was set in, pretty unique and not at all expected, but that's not always a bad thing. It was beautiful, to be honest, and that's not a word I thought I would use about any Last of Us episodes.
Yeah, I agree. And it's something we had talked about is it was an incredible episode, not one that I can rewatch too many times just because it's too much of an emotional toll, but man, incredible episode. So let's get started. The episode opens up with Joel and Ellie in the woods somewhere 10 miles west of Boston. They are on their way to Bill and Frank's. There's still a lot of tension between Joel and Ellie, and it seems like Joel is indirectly blaming Ellie for what happened to Tess. Ellie quickly shuts that down by pointing out that nobody forced Joel to take Ellie west. Joel and Tess needed a battery, and that's why they did it, so Tess's death is not Ellie's fault. This actually seems to hit Joel the right way, and you could see him actually respect Ellie a little bit after that. The two embark on a 5-hour hike, and along the way they stop in an abandoned Cumberland Farms where Joel searches for some stuff that he stashed there years ago. Ellie finds an old Mortal Kombat arcade game, which is cool. Joel is having trouble finding his stash, so Ellie goes exploring the rest of the Cumbies. For those of you who aren't from New England, like Damon and I, we call it a Cumbies. They always have restrooms available to the public, which is a huge advantage. Anyways, Ellie ends up finding this sketchy hatch, jumps inside to check it out. She finds a box of tampons, but proceeds to explore more. It's super creepy, and she ends up finding an infected who is trapped underneath some rubble. Ellie is more curious than scared, and she ends up pulling out her switchblade and cutting open the infected to inspect his skin. Obviously, since Ellie is missing out on high school science class, she's getting her dissection experience from elsewhere. She then sticks the switchblade in the infected's forehead and kills him. Her first confirmed kill. I'm just going to stop in the middle here. What were you thinking at that time, Damon?
First of all, I think Stephen King on Twitter beat me to the punch when he roasted the show for trying to put the mountainous, beautiful, scenic, streamy area with the 10 miles west of Boston pop up. But hey, man, it's been a long time during this pandemic. You never know what Mother Nature could have reclaimed. Still, very interesting overall. No guns for Ellie seems to be a common theme when it comes to how Joel treats her, even though they seem to be gaining some rapport. And there's some mutual respect, even if you got to squint to see it, you know what I mean? But I think that those two are getting a little bit closer. The Cumby scene, they do almost never have video game setups at Cumby, so that's my one takeaway from that I would deduct. But the rest of it was incredible. It felt like a little video game-esque hideout, you know what I mean? Where you stash your base and have your things stashed away. The Ellie scene to me when she goes down really showcases her recklessness, but also her badass nature, right? Definitely shows you that she'll probably be making some mistakes later in the season, just paired with she's young. She's going to make some silly mistakes like that. But luckily they get out okay this time around. Overall, I thought it was a nice way to kick things off, but you just know there's something around the corner.
Ellie comes back out of the hatch and doesn't tell Joel about anything that just happened. Joel stashes his assault rifle in a hiding spot because there isn't much ammo out in the wild. They leave the Cumbies and keep heading towards Bill and Frank's. On the way, they see a crashed airplane, which Ellie finds fascinating. Ellie asks about the whole inspection and how it started. Joel basically gives some more background on how the whole thing started. Cordyceps mutated and then got into flour and sugar, which ended up spreading to everyone around the world via breakfast, cereal, pancake mix, stuff like that. On Friday night, September 26, 2003, is when the first wave of infected started biting. By Monday, everything had been destroyed. On the hike, they passed by a gruesome site where a bunch of skeletons lie. Apparently, these are innocent people murdered by the government back in 2003. The military would sweep through towns and round up the healthy people. If there wasn't enough room in the quarantine zones, the soldiers would shoot these people. The camera then zooms in on a small skeleton with the remains of a rainbow blanket, presumably the skeleton of a child. End of our first real big scene. What is going on?
I really liked how they gave us the a bigger description from Joel of the methods of transmission overall of the cordyceps. I don't know if anyone else has tuned in and seen anything else on any Reddit boards or anything about it, but there was that whole theory about how Joel and Ellie just missed or Joel and his daughter just missed being infected by those heinous looking biscuits.
Oh yeah.
From grandma's house back home. So I thought it was kind of interesting to see that actually like said explicitly and played out. Good thing Joel's kind of an asshole and found an excuse not to eat them. You can tell he's trying to shield Ellie the whole time, and at this point, you got like the kind of pseudo father-daughter thing going on. But this world that they're in is so cruel and heinous that like I feel like shielding her is only going to do so much good.
It's funny that you had just mentioned you had a Freudian slip there with Ellie as Joel's daughter, so you could already kind of see that thing developing. So now we cut to September 30th, 2003, back during basically that week when the infection started. We see the same mother and baby of the skeletons from the scene before. Their clothes are matched by the clothes from the skeleton, which is the giveaway that they were executed by the military, essentially. The military is sweeping through, and we see FEDRA on their uniforms already. So that means that FEDRA organized very, very quickly. Probably just an offshoot of the survivors from government. They are ushering people out of town and spray painting red X's on houses they presume are abandoned. We see a house with security cameras, and then it cuts to the basement where we see a man holding a gun and watching the security footage. The soldiers leave the town, and we see the basement lights turn on. There are doomsday supplies everywhere, guns, ammo, sulfuric acid. We see the man emerge from the basement, which has a hidden trapdoor entrance. The man is played by Nick Offerman. We find out later that his name is Bill, so this is the Bill that Joel and Tess are talking about. We then get this great montage where Bill gets his pickup truck and he starts making a supplies run throughout the town. By the way, the town is in Massachusetts. He gets gas, he gets supplies from Home Depot. He even breaks into the power plant and turns on the utilities. As a doomsday prepper, he's having a great time and is fully prepared for this moment. Over the course of the montage, we also see that he is fortifying his little neighborhood with booby traps and fences. He's self-sustainable, and he's even raising chickens for food. The montage ends with him cooking a nice dinner for himself. As he's eating, he sees security footage of an infected walking towards his compound. The infected hits a tripwire, and a gun fires a bullet into his head. Bill laughs. So, Damon, what did you think about our first introduction to Nick Offerman, to Bill? We've been waiting a long time.
Let's fucking go. When we first saw his silhouette, you had a feeling who it was. And then they backed away and it gets more clear and you're like, God damn, there he is. It's about time. This is 2003 Boston, unfortunately a year before the Red Sox would have lifted the curse, because you just know Bill would have been all aboard that Cowboy Up train. Shout out Kevin Millar. But I thought the line, not today, you New World Order jackboot fucks. Like, that's his first speaking line. You just know he's going to have quite a role to play here. Honestly, this is the side we needed to see, because for the first year or so after pandemic hits, not everyone's going to have a bad time.
Right.
Nick Offerman, he goes off. Bill is everywhere. He's doing like the classic suburban dad like dream run every time he goes out in that truck.
Yeah, I mean, for us too, when the pandemic hit, I mean, you know, we were pretty busy. So being able to stay at home and kind of clear some things off the schedule, it wasn't the worst thing. But obviously, everyone's experience was vastly different, and Bill seems to be having a pretty good time. So now we cut to 2007. It's 4 years later, and Bill is just working in his basement. His homemade alarm goes off, and he finds another man that has fallen in his trap. The man claims that he's uninfected and that the Baltimore quarantine zone is gone and that he's trying to get to Boston. Bill scans the man and finds that he is indeed uninfected, so he spares his life. The man says his name is Frank, and he begs for a meal. Bill reluctantly agrees. So now we've met Bill and Frank. Frank takes a shower, and Bill leaves him some clothes. Bill then brings out 2 plates of fire-ass rabbit. Side note, Damon, you've had rabbit before. I've never had rabbit, but you say it's pretty tasty. So, what does it taste like, Damon?
It's a little gamier, I would say, than some meats, but at the same time, when done well, it's incredible. And if you have been eating out of a can for the last 4 years, I would assume it would be one of the biggest delicacies of your life.
In this post-apocalyptic world, like you said, meat is extremely rare in general. So Frank enjoys the shit out of it. Before he leaves, Frank asks to play this vintage piano that is at the house. Bill lets him give it a shot, and Frank decides to play Long, Long Time by Linda Ronstadt. Frank's singing is complete ass, so Bill steps in and starts playing. It's way better, and then the emotional rendition has Frank asking who the girl is. Bill tells Frank that there is no girl, which Frank already knew. The two then engage in a passionate kiss, which then leads to the bedroom. Frank tells Bill to take a shower, which is fucking hilarious because Bill probably hasn't showered in weeks. And imagine if someone just told you to take a shower right before you're about to fuck. Anyways, we get to a bedroom scene where we find out Bill has only been with one person previously, and it was a girl, and he obviously didn't like it because he's gay. He hasn't been with a man yet, so this is his first time. And before they hook up, Frank has this funny moment where he says that he's not a whore, so if they fuck, he's staying for at least a few more days. Pretty good job negotiating. So, Damon, what do you think about the introduction to Frank? I since we haven't played the game, I wasn't expecting them to be lovers, but very, very interesting spin.
Yeah, I did not know what to expect at all, but the original dialogue between Bill and Frank, when Bill basically gives Frank the speech that every libertarian or microeconomics professor at a community college would give, when he gives the old no free lunch kind of rendition to him. Frank does not take no for an answer, though. So you can tell that these two have some chemistry right away, which is pretty cool. They seem to represent the classic odd couple, where one is a bit more organized, a bit more like eccentric in terms of what their vision is. And then the other one is like, you know, the quirky, more like of a realist, I would say. Like the more like, which is kind of ironic because both of them can get pretty out there at times. But I thought it was super unique. Again, not sure how it plays out in the game in terms of the amount of time they spent together, their entire history or whatever. But this felt like something I'd never seen on the screen before. That might just be a representation of like other types of romance, like in, you know, everything LGBTQ wise, like in the mainstream now. But I thought it was pretty cool, honestly. And it made you feel like you never thought Nick Offerman was going to give this kind of a romantic performance on screen. Like, no offense to the guy, but like he's got some range. Yeah.
This was really really incredible performance by both actors. But yeah, Nick Offerman, man, holy shit. We then cut to 2010, where Bill and Frank have now been together for 3 years, but they're having a little argument. Frank wants to improve the look of the neighborhood, which means using some paint on the houses and gasoline for the lawnmower. Bill, because he's a realist and he's kind of a curmudgeon, he thinks this is a waste of resources, but Frank finally gets him to agree. Frank then mentions that the place will look nice for when they have friends over. Bill says that they don't have any friends, but Frank says that he's been talking to a nice woman on the radio. Bill is heated. We then cut to Bill and Frank having lunch with none other than Tess and Joel. Since this is 2010, we now know that Tess and Joel have been together for at least 10 years. Frank is having a wonderful time, but Bill keeps cocking a pistol right on the lunch table. Tess and Frank get along immediately, and they talk about working together. This is basically the origin story of their smuggling partnership. Frank takes Tess inside the house, leaving Bill and Joel outside. It's a funny dynamic, and Joel lets Bill know that he understands why he is wary of them. However, a partnership could prove to be fruitful, as Joel and Tess can get them supplies from the QZ, such as books, medicine, and machine parts. Bill still isn't interested, but Joel then points out that his fence is going to fall apart in a year. Joel can easily get him spools of aluminum to make it last longer. As Joel and Tess are leaving, Frank tells Tess that they should use a radio code based on decades, basically the radio code Ellie figured out in episode 1. Joel tells Bill that although FEDRA is unlikely to come by, there will be raiders who will approach at night. Bill doesn't seem concerned. So now we know how the four have built up a relationship. What do you think about that scene?
You just know Bill and Joel are like kindred spirits, the way they interact. Those eyes across the table, the fact they both want to blow each other's brains out at the sudden drop of a hat. You know what I'm saying? Both super protective. You also get the impression that Bill and Frank are way more privileged than anybody else around when it comes to like what they do on a day-to-day basis. Like Tess is in there like she's touring like a mansion. You know what I'm saying? Like she's in that point of it. And I mean, they have a sick setup. Bill did some great work. Frank put some finishing touches on. But man, I was just so captivated by how elite that setup that they had was in general. The line? One of the funniest lines when Joel was pretty much telling Bill that, like, you know, they're not the worst people that they could have met on the radio, so he can rest his fears. And Bill just comes with the, well, aren't I the lucky one? And that's a classic deadpan delivery that Offerman just kills all the time. The radio code dialogue was seemed a little bit forced at a point, but like at the same time, you only have so much dialogue you can give Tess and Frank and actually keep things like churning here. Because I mean, they spent most of this episode with Bill and Frank, and it's like not particularly close. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was the radio signal was one of the one of the parts where they didn't really follow show don't tell, but they had to put in so many things. So I feel like, yeah, they had no choice. But that's probably what the 2-hour cut of this episode might include more of a build up to that.
Release that cut.
I know, release that fucking cut. But speaking of cuts, we cut to 2013, 3 years later, where Bill and Frank are going on a run. Bill struggles to keep up because he's not in as good shape as Frank. Frank then takes Bill to a strawberry patch that he planted. Frank tells Bill that he traded a small gun for some strawberry seeds from Joel and Tess. The two share an emotional moment while tasting strawberries, and it's very nice. Later on that night, trouble looms. The raiders arrive and try to storm the compound. Bill's traps start kicking in, and we see fucking flamethrowers shooting out of the ground, shooting at the raiders. Frank wakes up to gunshots and explosions. He runs outside to see Bill standing out in the open, firing back at the raiders with a bolt-action rifle. Bill, get some fucking cover, man. But anyways, Bill is taking guys out when he gets hit by a bullet. Who would have seen that coming? He's just standing out in the open. But Frank sprints out and gets Bill inside. The electrified wall and booby traps are taking care of the rest of the raiders. Frank starts to pour alcohol on Bill's wound, but Bill doesn't care. Bill thinks that he's going to die, so he tells Frank to call Joel and that he's made a list of instructions for how to keep the compound running. What'd you think about that scene, David?
Really, I think this was the action scene that we were waiting for, because you just have been looking at all of these armaments, this incredible detection setup that Bill has going there, and the mention of raiders previously as well. So it seems like there's another foot waiting to drop in terms of some kind of big assault. Lo and behold, there was. The flamethrower was incredible. The setup that enabled Bill to basically pilot the whole thing by himself and hold off that many guys at once was kind of jaw-dropping. And I think it also reflects the closeness that Bill and Frank have. You know, when Frank is trying to get out there, is trying to get involved in the fighting, and Bill just takes the mantle of the constant protector in that relationship. And he's just not okay with that. Basically forces him back inside even after he's been shot in the side, which is, you know, pretty wild in itself. And I think the setup of Bill, I wouldn't say on death's door, but he looks like he's in critical condition, to say the least.
Yeah.
Quite like a fortune flip once we get our next flash forward.
Yeah. Because the scene actually starts off with Bill Bill says, "Hey, I'm sorry for getting old on you," right? So now we cut to our next scene. It's 2023. So this is 10 years later. So they're pretty old now, and Frank is in a wheelchair. So it seems that Frank is suffering from some sort of disease. Could be MS. It's probably cancer, most likely. The couple, they're still very much in love. Bill is still healthy, but he's feeding Frank his pills, but they just seem to be pain pills because the pharma industry has not developed since the apocalypse, so there are not new cancer treatments that we have today. Bill carries Frank to bed, showing just how sick Frank is. Bill wakes up the next morning and sees Frank already awake, waiting for him. Frank drops a bomb, no pun intended, on Bill. "Today will be my last day." Bill is devastated. Frank's plan is to crush all of the pain pills and drown them with some wine. Basically, Frank wants to have one last good day with Bill and then OD. It's a super emotional scene. And look, man, I'm not even going to lie to you, David. I was shedding some tears during the scene, but I didn't want you and fucking Tyler to laugh at me, so I just stayed quiet. But that shit hit me hard. And it hit me harder on the rewatch, man. Fucking HBO. Frank wants to also get married on his last day, and then he wants to fall asleep in Bill's arms. Obviously, Bill refuses this request, but Frank begs him to love me the way I want you to. That part had me fucked up. But anyways, they get married. Bill cooks one last dinner for Frank. It's the same meal as the one Bill cooked when they first met. The rabbit with vegetables and wine. The dinner goes by, and it's finally time for the moment. Bill walks in with 2 additional wine glasses, and he pours the wine into both glasses. Frank chugs his wine first, and then Bill follows it up. And Frank then realizes that Bill actually put a bunch of the painkiller pills in the bottle. So he's deciding to die with Frank. Bill then tells Frank that "you were my purpose." And Jesus Christ, what a heavy episode. I'm kind of pissed off because this just came out of nowhere for us. But anyways, Bill proceeds to wheel Frank to the bedroom for their last night together. What'd you think, David?
Well, yeah, it was a fucking haymaker, man. To add on to your point from before, the historical context would support that. I mean, they've claimed they only make Oxy, and it would make a lot of sense that they strictly made that, given that that was the big Oxy boom in the early 2000s. So they just kept riding that wave. But those are definitely not pills that are helping him actually heal. Those are simply Oxy. Tom kind of proclaims it. It's not an ultimatum. It's more of a proclamation that he gives Bill. And Bill's just there to kind of pick up the pieces and really give him a great last day. One of the reasons that I think this is just, for lack of a better term, sad as fuck, right? Is it's kind of a nightmarish scenario where it's, who would die first? You know, if you're in a relationship with someone or if you're close with someone, even if it's like a sibling at some point, like sometimes in the back of our head, that question, what would happen if I died first? What would happen if they died first? That's just one of those grim realities of life that I think that connected viscerally to in a way. You get the impression these two really do love each other. I mean, it's really well acted scene. Frank, our guy from the White Lotus, absolutely kills it as well. And I just think that the line, "This isn't the tragic suicide at the end of a play," puts, in a way it kind of is though, because then you kind of evoke a more not screenplay, but like a Shakespearean reference. I mean, Romeo and Juliet's the one that comes to mind. Even though theirs was done unintentionally, this one hits you in the feels relentlessly. And I haven't seen anything on the screen that actually made me this sad in a long time.
Yeah, this messed me up for a few days after. And, the craziest thing about this scene is that you see a couple have so much happiness, even though they're not interacting with anybody else. Like or Joel and Tess they are, but it's just, they're finding whatever they can in this post-apocalyptic world and finding purpose and finding real love. And, to see a guy like Bill actually be happy and then just have that taken away from him, but have him also just be happy that he got to experience happiness was just a wild twist of emotions. And when they first were mentioning Bill and Frank, I was just thinking about two scumbags like that were, smugglers or raiders or whatever. And I just did not expect it to be this. And that's also what actually messed me up a ton. But we finally cut to present day where Joel and Ellie finally make it to Bill and Frank's compound. Obviously, Bill and Frank are now dead, so there's no one there to greet them. Joel enters the code to the front gate, and he sees that some of the flowers are dead. This is something I noticed on the rewatch, which was also just like brutal, because Frank was probably taking care of the flowers, and they've been dead for a little bit, so everything is just like wilting. The plants are wilting. It's very symbolic. Joel and Ellie enter Bill and Frank's house and get no response. This is Ellie's first time in a nice-looking house, so she's completely mesmerized. Ellie finds a letter that Bill left on the table, and holy shit, this is quite an emotional read. Bill also leaves a key for Joel. So Joel tells Ellie to read the letter out loud. The letter is dated August 29th, 2023. Bill addresses the letter to Joel, and he tells Joel the bunker code and that he can take whatever he needs. He tells Joel that even though he doesn't like him, he respects him, and they are sort of friends. Bill used to hate the world and was happy when everyone died, but when he met Frank, that changed. He believed that Frank was worth saving, and he dedicated his life to protecting him. He says that he and Joel were put on this earth to protect love, and he tells Joel that, hey, my weapons and equipment are all now yours, and you can use them to protect Tess. That fucking hurts. This part of the letter hits Joel very hard. He has to step outside for some fresh air. What'd you think about that before we finish up the scene?
I mean, in a way, the major point of this episode, the story was impeccable, but since we only get such a short look at them, it's only a fraction of like what will be the greater part of the season. The main point of the story and the central plot is to emotionally round Joel out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Which I think they did really well. Going this forward and seeing all these, like all the writing on the wall, how the places change once they die, really reinforces the concept of like, not to sound really corny, but like love and the relationships you have with people, especially in this dark and dreary post-apocalyptic world, are really what keeps everything going and moving. And I think that human connection piece is only going to become more central to this as we see more savagery and more of Joel and Ellie crossing the country.
Yeah, it almost seems like, when the letter is first being read, Joel knows immediately that Bill and Frank are dead and that they took their own lives. But it's the part when he says, hey, use whatever I have to protect Tess. That hits Joel, and it seems like that's finally going to get him to appreciate Ellie, and it melts a lot more of the tension because you gotta love who you have, and you can't take people's presence in your life for granted. So anyways, Joel has to walk outside when he reads that part of the letter. He then takes the key that Bill left to his pickup truck, goes into the garage, and he finds that the garage has all the ingredients necessary to make and charge a car battery. Joel then makes Ellie show her arm one more time just to confirm that she's truly immune. She is. Her arm looks fine. Joel tells Ellie that he plans on going to Wyoming to go find his brother Tommy, who used to be a firefly. Ellie can come with, and maybe Tommy will find a way to get Ellie to the fireflies out west, the ones who are trying to make a cure. However, there are some rules. First off, they don't talk about Tess, and they also don't talk about their past. Rule number 2 is that Ellie can't show her arm or describe her condition to anyone because she'll just get shot. Rule 3 is that Joel is the boss. The two then grab supplies from the house and get going. Ellie finds a small pistol and brings it with her. Joel doesn't know. You gotta give the kid a gun. I mean, she needs a strap. They also take advantage of the hot water situation. They each take a shower before leaving. This will be their only shower for a long, long time. Ellie has never been in a car before, so she's pumped. They drive off as Linda Ronstadt is bumping on the cassette. It's the same song that Bill first played Frank on the piano on the day they met. The episode ends with a shot of the open window from the bedroom where Bill and Frank died. We never see their bodies, just the shot outside the window. All right, what did you think about all of that?
The tape cassette being on that song is meaningful because I think that even rewinds you to when the last time that was driven was on their last day, right? So that means that like they were sitting there in that car probably bawling their eyes out listening to the song that first like kind of brought them together, which is only more depressing, but I digress. I would also say that the shot from that window, how that was used to kind of close out the narrative, as if you're from their point of view, but you know that the room is, there are corpses in there. They're not going to show you the room. It's going to ruin the whole like tone of the shot. But the fact that you get their point of view as the ending kind of zoom in, as if you're getting closer to where their final resting place, but that you'll never see it, I thought was really fascinating. And I thought that shot was super well done. I loved how they closed the episode out.
All right, well, that's the episode. That was fucking emotional as hell. What are you... it seems like now we have everything that we need in place to move the story along. We now understand how they get the vehicle, how they're going to be able to get to the west. So now it's going to be pure just adventure. And, I mean, there's going to be way more pain.
Yeah, give me some of that Mad Max shit, man. Give me some of that dystopian hijinks.
Yeah, I think I need an episode of just, like, gunfire and basically Mission Impossible type of fucking action because this episode like fucked me up so hard.
We're simple men. That's all we want.
I need a break. HBO, you did what you had to do. People are gonna win Emmys from this. Hopefully Nick Offerman wins one because that was an incredible performance. But give me some action because I can't take that anymore. Like I was tearing up hard. A man can only handle so much. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the recap. We will be back with episode 4. So catch you later.